What up, G Life? It's your boy MC Shadow back at you with another video. Make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, check out the playlist. The playlist where I have my videos and the folders makes the video you're looking for a lot easier. Helps me get into the algorithm. If you click on the subscribe and like, you'll be doing me a big favor. It's free, it don't cost anything, you know what I mean? Now, what I wanted to talk about today was gangs when they first started, barrios. When they first came around, because I had made a video talking about, something similar to this, and I had mentioned it, and my subscribers, were have questions and we're asking about what do I mean that when the barrios evolved and that the barrios what they are now are not what they were back then. Now you have to understand that these gangs have been around since the 1800s. So before the 1900s, despite what individuals want to say, these barrios were around before the 1900s, meaning that they've been around since the 1889, 1890, roughly around that time period, when these barrios first were starting here in Los Angeles. You have very old barrios, like Dogtown, Macy Street, Alpine, Tortilla Flats, the Russian Flats, all of that. And tons more. But when these barrios first started, were not what they are now, are not these street gangs that they are now. Barrios, when they first started, they ran differently. There was a lot of different things that they did. They weren't like tagging. There was no graffiti. They weren't jumping people in. They didn't have nicknames. The dress code was obviously different. Let's see what else. Like there was just a bunch of stuff that they did different. Now the barrios, when they first originated at, were a group of youths, right? Young kids. They were kids, bro. You know what I mean? 11, 12, 13-year-old, kids who were growing up in these places where there was a lot of discrimination and a lot of racism. Because people have to keep this in mind. How you see California now is not how it was back then. Although now in Los Angeles you see nothing but Hispanics around. Back then there was nothing but whites. There was very few Mexicans, a little bit of Mexicans, a little bit of blacks, and a little bit of other, different races. They were all getting mistreated equally. Asian, Irish, Russian, they were all getting mistreated because these Americans seen them as, and like, get back to your country, you don't belong here, etc. All of them equally, including blacks. While people bring up in history that blacks were getting hanged, this was true. They were getting lynched. So were Hispanics, so were Asians, and so were these other illegal immigrants, pues. I have already, played many videos where I posted, the signs that they had, no Hispanics here, no blacks here, no colors here, no Irish, no blah, 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 blah. These Americans were blaming these immigrants for all the problems that was wrong with America. You know what I mean? They just wanted to blame somebody, because first it was the blacks, then it was the Jewish, then it was the Japanese, then it was the Mexicans, then it was the Irish, then it was the Russians, then it was the Middle Easterns. It's always the blaming game with America. It's how America gets down. It's been working for so many years. Anywho. So at this time, a lot of Hispanics were, suffering a lot of discrimination against. They were being bullied. And remember, they couldn't call police because police were part of that brutality. They were also beating these people and not showing up, when they would call, assaults and robberies. They didn't give a fuck about these individuals. Look it up. It's public record. I'm not making this shit up. You can look it up. It's public record that police officers were crooked back then, bro. A lot of them were members of the KKK. I'm not making this shit up. It's public record. You guys could go and look it up yourselves. I always come on here knowing that people could just research what I'm saying. Go look it up and then come back. So a lot of these law enforcement were Ku Klux Klan members and just didn't give a fuck about this. So there was nobody that the raza could run to. So these kids started, getting tired of their parents getting mistreated and all the bully and racism that was happening, that they started banding together. So originally barrios were started. You had to be actually from that neighborhood, right? They were named after blocks. So you actually had to live on those blocks. You know what I mean? So they were kids from that block. Whoever was willing to stand up for the fight, was welcome in. So there was no jumping in, no sale of drugs. There was none of that. It was surely just to protect their own. You know what I mean? If you had a problem with one of us, you had a problem with all of us. That's how it worked. So a lot of them went by their actual real names, you know what I mean? Whatever their real names were, whether Andy, Andrew, Jose, Joseph. That's why in a lot of old graffiti, you see, people are actually named by their real names, because back then there was no nicknames. Maybe a few kids here and there had nicknames. How people refer to that individual, whether his parents called him Flaco or Gordo or Memo Short, or shit like that. Were the only ones that had nicknames at the time. And then, obviously, these kids didn't fit in with the Americans. These young Chicanos didn't fit in with Americans. They didn't fit with their homeland. So they created their own stilo, you know what I mean? Which turned out to be like the Pachuco, what they call the Zoot Suits and all of that, was their stilo, their grammar as well, because, although their family spoke Spanish, they were going to school here where they were learning English, so that's why the lingo comes off as Spanglish, because they will speak Spanish at home and speak English in school. That's how you get the mix of languages, and that's where you get the slang and stuff like that, right? Um, so that's how you got the lingo and all of that. So these groups at the time when they first started, they weren't going at it with other Hispanic gangs. At first, they were going at it with these whites that were driving their pickup trucks, hunting these people and stuff like that, right? So that's who they were battling. They were battling them, law enforcement, and etc. Bulliers, pues. And as time kept going and these groups started getting bigger and bigger and ballsier and started spreading, then that's when everything else came into the picture. The criminal elements, the nicknames, the tagging and claiming actual territory. That's when all of that started becoming a factor. But in the beginning, it was not about that. You know what I mean? It was not about the actual territory or the nicknames or the none of that or the criminal element. It was just about protecting your own. Your own. But like I said, power influences. The power is going to go straight to your head, and that's with any human being. You see it, time after time, from governors, senators, presidents, law enforcement agencies. Power goes to the head. Power corrupts. It's one of the main weaknesses of human beings. We let something, when you give an individual power, it influences big time. Same with gangs, no different. So then after a while, it was like, we're getting bullied, we're getting picked on. Now it's our time to do the bullying and picking. And that, and still at the time you weren't able to get a good job if you were Hispanic and blah 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 blah. So these individuals, well, if you're not willing to hire me to do the work, then I'm just gonna take it. So they started doing robberies and etc. etc. So then a lot of these people started getting caught up or whatever, and then you see that, what was the guy's name? Well, his name is Andrew, you know what I mean? And he goes to this school, that's all I know, but that was enough to track you down because there was no nicknames at the time, so you were just referred to by your real name. Hit up your real name, all they needed was just your name and what school you went to, and they were going to pick you up. That's how it went. You know what I mean? So then that's when they started, giving each other nicknames, that way they wouldn't get caught up by law enforcement. You know what I mean? You would go to you were being referred to as a different name. So before, while you were being called by your actual name and people were hearing it, so when the cops came and asked questions, all you really needed to know was what school he went to and his name, and bam, there would, you know what I mean? It was enough to go and scoop you up, what grade you were. So now with the nickname, it became a little bit more difficult to actually home in on who these individuals were. Why they started giving each other nicknames, then claiming territory. They became very territorial as well, for the same reason, because a lot of these groups started sprouting out through all over the place. So people started breaking up sectors and stuff like that, and one group thought they were better than the next group, and you would get clash and tensions, and bam, it started manifesting into what we know now as gangbanging. But that's not how it originated or why it started, and none of that. Slowly, it started mutating into that. Like it always does. A lot of, you see it happen a lot with companies, with organization, with groups. They start off for a good cause, and then power influences and all of that, and it starts mutating into something completely different. Sadly, individuals, since they're stuck in that power trip, they don't recognize it, you know what I mean, until it's already like, bam, what it is now. But that's not why it originated. And that's what I meant when I said that. These gangs were different, and how it first started and what it is now. Because it does evolve as time goes by, and it keeps evolving. That's just how it is. Life in the streets. That's why I'm saying stay in school. You know what I mean? You get nothing out of this life. It's crazy. But yeah, just a little something, why they first started and how they first started, and the original reasons why, but now it's completely different. Obviously, it's power, money, drugs, and all of that. But that's not why they originated. But I'm just saying, Shadow, we are.